The Polestar 3 is one of the most frustrating cars I've reviewed this year. And not because it's bad. I wish this was easier to park. And then where the mirror doesn't go down. See, and the cameras are not high enough resolution. I'm afraid I'm gonna curb this. That's a software thing. I just don't understand why they don't do it. It's number 8. It's because it's so close to being incredible. And I'm gonna show you where that line is at. So today we're going deep. I'm gonna tell you exactly how this car drives. I'm gonna tell you how it feels. I'm gonna tell you about the seats, the ergonomics, the range, the charging, the experience of this vehicle every day and what it's like to live with. Because I want you to know all the wonderful things, but also the things that you really need to understand before you consider buying this. So let's start where I started, behind the wheel. What's one of the most important things to know? Well, there's a sheer eagerness to this that just is fun. So let's talk performance for a minute. Is this a full fat performance car? No, it is not. But it does have a nice amount of low down, just go. You know, if you're down at the bottom of the range, you can push it and it'll move. And it will move consistently. It's very, very linear in its power delivery. And it does it without too much fuss. Now, if you're on a wet road and you truly give it the beans, you're gonna get some wheel slip. Like right here, we're just gonna send it. All right, so I'm gonna come to a full stop. 3, 2, 1. Felt a little bit of torque steer at the front. A little bit of trying to scrabble for traction. Nothing too crazy. It's not that fast. I think that that's one thing people should be aware of. This is billed as a performance car. It is not. It is a fun car. And it does a great job of being that. You know, don't go into this expecting anything on the level of like a Lucid Air Grand Touring, you know, an M3 Performance or Model Y Performance even. Don't go into this expecting things like that. Go into this expecting fun. I would say that this is what I would have imagined an electric Subaru Forester STI to be. And I say that with a deep love of Subaru. Expect instead a level of fun and a level of smoothness as well that is very confidence inspiring. And I gotta say too, like Polestar fans, I understand why you love your Polestar 3. This has shown me why this is such a fun vehicle, why it's so enjoyable, and why so many of you really do adore these cars. You do for good reason. So let's talk about the brakes for a moment. Regen's gonna do 90% of what you need. Really, the sport brakes are overkill. You don't need them. But they do look cool with the big yellow calipers, big old brakes. Remind me again of my Subaru back in its track days when it had massive Brembo dinner plates on the front. These do an excellent job of slowing you down, and they really are impressive, but you don't need them. I mean, so here's the thing, like, you can let off, but it doesn't fully stop that easily. But that last 1 mile an hour, it does it does it super smoothly. Like that blending of the regen in is like almost perfection. Like truly, truly well done. Now let's give it the beans. It runs out of steam. This runs out of steam relatively quickly. I mean, I have to say, like that first oomph really low down at about 15, 20 miles an hour is there, but it runs out of steam. The moment you get to 60, it backs off. I'm in full performance mode right now too. So it's certainly got the grunt, it's got the move, but it doesn't have the sustain that more dedicated performance EVs have. That doesn't diminish the fun of it though. It does move. It does move and it does get going. It's not a performance car. Let's talk steering for a minute here. One thing that I am really impressed by is the directness of the steering and how communicative it is. You can change the steering feel. I have found the middle tier for me is very happy. The light steering feel doesn't give you enough information and the firm is it's too heavy. The middle ground on this is pretty much the perfect setting in any drive mode because it gives you exactly what you need, which is information on how the vehicle is moving and on where your wheels are pointed. And it does it in a way that communicates to you exactly what you need to know. And like the Lucid, it's not a fatiguing type of steering. You don't get over communication through it. You don't feel too much in terms of bumps. The road surface isn't overwhelming the other information that you're processing as you drive. And that is important in a vehicle like this, because one of the things that's so interesting is how well sorted the suspension is. You are also lacking some information. You can feel the road. You're not totally disconnected, and this is on the sport suspension and the big sport wheels and tires. And this does amazingly well. It's far better of a suspension than it has any right to be at both this price point and this setup. But one thing that's so interesting to me is the suspension gives you information on the road and on grip that you have to listen a little bit more for. So if the steering wheel gave you a lot more information on this, it might actually drown out what you would be getting through the suspension here. I can feel a good amount of the roadway here, but I'm not fully understanding what the state of the grip is. So in the dry, when you're not necessarily dealing with changing road conditions, this will do better. In the wet, where the road conditions change, it's something you have to be a bit more cautious about. Let's see how we do on this turn right here. There's a little bit of unevenness on the road surface. There's definitely some material on it. Yeah, even on these sport tires, it's still, I can feel when I'm hitting the limits of traction in this. I wish it communicated more through the chassis to me, but I'm still getting enough to be moderately confident. Like, there's a level of confidence I don't get in this that I get in the Lucid and the Rivian both, that I get in an i4, but this still does a great job for what it is. I think it's just that I can't quite tell what the surface of the road is ahead of me, and I can't quite feel it to the same degree, which makes me less able to modulate the throttle in a turn as I go across differing materials and thus be able to better understand what's going to happen. In the wet, I am just not as confident. I don't really know what the road surface is doing, and that lack of communication that comes through isn't telling me what I'm driving across. On a better car, I could tell that I'm driving on pine needles, for example. On this, not really sure. And here, when I start to push it, it's right at the edge, and it's scrambling for traction, but it still manages to hold it. But I don't feel like it's going to, and I'm not sure, so that makes me more concerned about carrying this level of speed through a turn than I otherwise would be. All that aside, it still does a great job. There's a little whiff of understeer right there at the edge, and then you can punch out of a turn. It really is a backroad missile. It doesn't have the raw ferocity of a Lucid. It doesn't have the complete, just pure ballistic ability of a Taycan Turbo S. But it doesn't need that here. You see our speeds are low. We're dealing with handling here. Got a little bit of understeer there at the edge. It still grins though, And it's so smooth at a turn exit that I can kind of pitch it in and make that turn, and the steering's so direct, I'm not wondering about where I'm gonna go. I know where I'm gonna go. I have to back off more in the rain than I would otherwise like to. I think that's the drawback of this setup and why I would recommend buying the non-sport package. I think you might give up a little bit in terms of chassis refinement. I think you might give up a little bit in terms of handling, but it will give you more of an all-round feel that will make this car more enjoyable every day than you would otherwise feel. I think the engineers at Polestar really should be commended for the sheer level of competence that they were able to get in this vehicle. This is narrower than you really realize at first when you get in it, and it feels small. That initial ability to place the wheels that I mentioned at the start, that gives you an ability to place in a tighter turn than you would otherwise. Woo! And the suspension handles these bumps. I mean, I'm really taking a lot of these turns faster than you would in most cars. And it is confidence inspiring. One of the things that is really well done in this is the visibility out the front. The A-pillar is not too big, and I have enough visibility to be able to see directly around a turn. So I don't have issues looking all the way to the end of my sight line, and the steering is well done enough that I'm not unsure of where my tires are at any moment. So I'm able to know where I'm placing the vehicle as I go, and then keep my vision further down the road so I'm better able to understand what am I about to encounter as far as road surface, and as a result be a lot more confident in my movement. That's a rare combination, and combined with such amazing incentives right now, it's a fantastic deal. So one of the things that this does have is auto lane change. Useful. Now we're in some pretty thick rain because I wanted to go ahead and demonstrate how well it does as far as sensing around it. The sensor suite can tell where vehicles are. It does a good job of letting me know if I do want to merge, it'll alert me. Despite the lack of blind spot cameras, it does a good job being able to track where I'm at and what options I do have when I'm driving. The heads-up display does show that I can merge to the right, so it shows that I've got a solid lane on the left and a dotted lane on the right-hand side here, and it does allow me to go ahead and auto merge if I go ahead and set my blinker on. I do have to keep my hand on the wheel, but overall very stable. It could do a better job of lane centering though, as I've mentioned before. It does move just a little bit in here. Like the Lucid is like perfectly in the middle. The Rivian is pretty much straight dead on. Tesla does a very good job as well, being right in the middle. This is good, but I get a little bit of movement side to side that does feel like it's wandering just a little bit. It could do better, but it's still not anything that makes me feel a lack of confidence in it. It's really nice how when you're really pushing this, it does a great job of being very direct. You can point it, you need just the right amount of input, and you don't overcompensate. Now, one of the challenges is with this in the wet. So on these summer tires are not as strong, and you become less confident in the vehicle and its ability to carry the speed that you otherwise believe it can take through a turn. And so I find myself in the rain backing off more than I would in the dry, even though the vehicle probably can do it, but I don't feel that it can. I'm not sure, and that lack of sureness starts to steal a bit of the driving experience when it's wet. I think that's a loss. I wish it was different. So how does the ADAS do in the Polestar 3? Well, fairly solid. It does a good job of keeping you in between the lines, easy to get to, does require your hands to be on the steering wheel, but so far I found that in the last 3 days of driving this on the freeway, it does well. You know, it has active sensors. It's definitely better than Tesla for detecting what's around it, because those active sensors definitely give it a lot more range in terms of vision, especially when you're dealing with spray and heavy rain out here. I do not trust camera-only ADAS because camera-only just cannot see through what's out there. This does a really good job of seeing traffic ahead. I was driving home the other day through a fairly heavy atmospheric river, and it did a great job of looking down the road and was able to see traffic stopping that any camera-based system would have missed. So that was impressive, and it did a great job of handling it from a good distance. It slowed down early. On the driver's display and the heads-up display, you can see the solid line here, you can see the dotted line here, you see a little arrow showing kind of where it's putting steering pressure. And it does a fairly good job of staying in the middle, but it's certainly not perfect. And it does do a little bit of weaving especially, and it does have some trouble when you've got like a groove in the pavement that looks like a line. It can get tripped up with that, but not as badly as some other systems that I've seen. I can't speak to the quality of their GPS or LiDAR data or their mapping information. The vehicle does use Google Maps on the sat-nav, but I couldn't tell you, how good their overall 3D mapping and LiDAR mapping of the roadways is and where they source that information from. So let's talk charging. It's okay. I was able to get 135 kilowatts at a 350 kilowatt charger. Didn't go any further past that. It's fine. You know, it has a fat charging curve. It's stated 135 kilowatts, well into the 60-something% range. So there is that going for it, but it does not have the peak power that you get with a lot of other vehicles. For reference, when I plugged in a charge at 25%, I had 75 minutes to hit 80%. That was how long it would take. Definitely far too long. When I plugged it in, preconditioned, I got 135 kilowatts, and I was going to sit there for an hour and change just getting this thing charged up. So I think there's definitely better ones as far as charging. On road trips, you're going to have much better options because you're going to be sitting and waiting for a while on a earlier than 2026 model. So let's talk price and purchasing for a minute. They are practically giving these away. Right now, you can get an amazing set of incentives. You can get a Polestar 3 for $499 a month. That's an incredible deal. With their financing, their lease or loan programs, you can get this at not only a super cheap APR or money factor, you can get it for 18 grand off. So what would be a $70,000, $80,000 car, you're getting for the 50s? That's incredible. So they are practically just handing the vehicle to you right now. It's such a good deal right now that it's actually better than trying to find one of these used because you can get the financing so good that you wouldn't be able to match that financing deal with a used one. So let's talk company viability for a minute. Polestar is principally owned by Geely. Geely also owns Volvo. In fact, Polestar was at one point a sub-brand of Volvo and even an experiment before it spun off. Does that make me super concerned about Polestar's viability long run? Not really, but still, Geely has not publicly backstopped Polestar to a degree that it really inspires investor confidence. And as a result, as of time of filming, Polestar stock is below $1 on the NASDAQ and they're in danger of being delisted. And so they're doing a 1-for-30 reverse stock split to get the stock back to a high enough price that it will stay listed. Not a great look. They also had to warn in a regulatory filing that it may have a going concern risk, as in the company could fold if it doesn't have sufficient financing, and that was a probable enough danger that they needed to disclose it. So that is a concern for anyone looking at buying one of these. Now, am I as worried about that? No. Because despite the lack of clarity from Geely on the status of the brand and their willingness to invest in it, I think the worst thing that could happen is Polestar just being folded back into Volvo and effectively becoming a trim level, or Polestar vehicles stopping being produced entirely, but still supported through the Volvo dealer network. Now, I did talk to another Polestar owner, and he said that it is challenging getting service done right now with at least the Portland area Volvo dealers. They're typically pretty backed up, it's hard to get parts, and they don't know how to support a Polestar very well. But that said, it's Portland, smaller city. Bigger metro areas, you're probably not going to have that issue. Should you buy a Polestar 3? Yes. If you want a car that's fun to drive, eager like a young Labrador puppy, because this has a fantastic driving feel. It's extremely well sorted. The Polestar engineers did a truly fantastic job with it. But at the same time, the seats don't work for me. I really dislike the cloth interior. And I think there's a lot of other ergonomics here that they could have done much better. But that's okay, because in the end, when you take it down a road like this, you're going to smile and keep smiling, just like I've been for the past 2 hours. All right, so where do we end this? What do we do about the Polestar 3? I mean, there's definitely some issues. The seats are a big issue. I mean, I have trouble with those. Viability of the company is also another worry. That's another thing. But I'll tell you the biggest thing. I gotta go home soon. Light's running out. And sun's gonna be down relatively soon. But I'm not going back on the freeway. No, I'm taking a back road home. I'm gonna turn the cameras off. I'm gonna go blasting down a road. I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna love that drive home. And you know what? This thing is excellent. It's a blast. All the issues aside, you really should strongly consider it. Don't worry too hard about the company. Make sure that the seats work for you and enjoy it. Because in the end, that's what this is about. So get into Polestar 3, go have fun with it. They're an absolute steal right now. Like and subscribe. I'll have the buyer's guide soon. I got a BMW i4 coming up soon. Also a Tesla full self-driving test. We got a lot of goodies coming. Can't wait to show it to y'all. Thanks for joining. Subscribe. I'll see y'all soon.